The microphone screeched, a piercing wail that silenced the glittering crowd. Ethan Hart, trembling but unyielding, stood at the heart of the billionaire's wedding, his voice a blade slicing through the opulence. "You're all celebrating a lie," he shouted, "and I'm here to expose a murder." The Hamptons estate sparkled under the summer sun, a sprawling monument to wealth with its manicured gardens and crystal chandeliers dangling from open-air tents. Guests in tailored suits and shimmering gowns gasped, their champagne flutes frozen mid-sip. Ethan, all of 22, felt his heart pound like a war drum. His father, billionaire tech mogul Victor Hart, stood at the altar beside his bride-to-be, Sylvia Langston, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. This was supposed to be Victor's Dia's second marriage to cement his empire. Instead, his estranged son had just hijacked it. Ethan's eyes locked onto Caleb, his boyfriend, who stood a few feet away, his blonde hair catching the golden light. Caleb's steady gaze was Ethan's anchor, a silent promise, "We're in this together." They'd driven 6 hours from Brooklyn, fueled by coffee and desperation, to crash this wedding. Ethan hadn't spoken to his father in 3 years, not since Victor threw him out for coming out as gay. But this wasn't just about old wounds. Ethan had uncovered something far darker, a secret that could unravel everything. 3 years ago, Ethan was the golden child of Hart Enterprises, groomed to inherit a fortune. But when he told his father he loved men, Victor's reaction was swift and brutal. "No son of mine will disgrace this family," he'd said, slamming the door on Ethan's life. Exiled to a cramped Brooklyn apartment, Ethan rebuilt himself, finding love with Caleb, a barista with a sharp wit and a heart bigger than the city. They were happy, mostly until Ethan stumbled across an encrypted file on a discarded company laptop. It held emails, bank records, and a chilling plan. Victor and Sylvia were plotting to eliminate her ex-husband, Richard Langston, to secure his shares in a multi-billion-dollar merger. The discovery had hit Ethan like a freight train. He'd spent weeks digging, hacking, and piecing together the truth, with Caleb by his side, urging him to act. "You can't let them get away with this," Caleb had said, his voice fierce. "Not just for you, for everyone they'll hurt." So here they were, crashing the wedding of the decade, with Ethan clutching a USB drive loaded with evidence and a heart full of rage. "Ethan, get out." Victor's voice boomed, his face red as he stormed toward the stage. Security guards in black suits closed in, but Ethan held his ground, the microphone shaking in his hand. "You think you can silence me again?" He spat. "I know what you and Sylvia are planning. Richard's death wasn't an accident, was it?" The crowd erupted in whispers. Sylvia, radiant in her ivory gown, paled, her eyes darting to Victor. Richard Langston, her ex, had died in a car crash 6 months ago, a tragedy. The papers called it. But Ethan's file told a different story: tampered brakes, a hired mechanic, and a payout to keep it quiet. He'd spent sleepless nights wrestling with what to do. Confronting his father meant risking everything: his safety, Caleb's, their future. But silence meant letting a killer walk free. Caleb stepped closer, his hand brushing Ethan's arm. "You've got this," he whispered. Ethan nodded, drawing strength from Caleb's touch. He raised the microphone again. "I have proof," he said, his voice steadier now. "Emails, payments, everything. You thought you could bury it, Dad, but I'm done being your secret." Victor lunged forward, but a guest, silver-haired man Ethan recognized as a board member, held up a hand. "Let him speak," the man said, his voice calm but commanding. The guards hesitated, and Ethan seized the moment. He pulled the USB from his pocket, holding it aloft like a weapon. "This is everything." Hand it to the police. Or I will. The air crackled with tension. Sylvia's smile was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. Ethan's heart raced, but he felt alive, unburdened. For years, he'd carried his father's rejection like a stone in his chest. Now, standing here, he was reclaiming his voice not just as Victor's son, but as a man who loved fiercely and fought for what was right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the estate in a fiery glow, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Exposing the truth would come at a cost. Victor's empire was vast, his influence deeper than Ethan could fathom. But with Caleb by his side and the truth in his hands, Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. The wedding was in ruins, and so was the lie that had held it together. The crowd's murmurs grew into a roar, a tidal wave of shock and curiosity. Ethan stood frozen, the USB drive burning in his hand as security guards hovered like vultures. Caleb's grip on his arm tightened, a lifeline in the chaos. Victor's face twisted, his usual composure shattered. "You're delusional," he snarled, stepping closer. "You think you can waltz in here with lies and ruin me." His voice dripped with venom, but Ethan saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. Victor wasn't just angry, he was cornered. Sylvia, ever the poised heiress, moved to Victor's side, her smile a brittle mask. "Ethan, darling, you're upset," she said, her voice honeyed but sharp. "Let's talk privately. No need to make a scene." Her eyes, though, betrayed her cold, calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. Ethan shook his head, his resolve hardening. "No more secrets," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "You both planned Richard's death. I have the emails, dates, times, payments to the mechanic who rigged his car. It's all here." He waved the USB, and the crowd leaned forward, hanging on his every word. A woman in a sapphire gown stood up, her voice cutting through the noise. "Is this true, Victor?" It was Margaret Klein, a journalist known for her ruthless exposés. Her phone was already out, recording. Ethan's stomach lurched. This was bigger than he'd planned. The truth was spreading, unstoppable. Victor's jaw clenched, but before he could speak, Caleb stepped forward. "You don't get to intimidate him anymore," he said, his voice low but fierce. At 24, Caleb was no stranger to standing up to bullies. Faced his own share growing up in a small town where being openly gay made him a target. Ethan's telling the truth, and you know it. The silver-haired board member James Whitaker spoke again. "Victor, if there's evidence, we need to see it. Now." His tone was measured, but his eyes were steel. Ethan realized James wasn't just a guest, was a power player, someone Victor couldn't ignore. Ethan's hands trembled as he handed the USB to James. "It's all there," he said. "Bank transfers, emails between Victor and Sylvia, even a contract with the mechanic. Richard was going to block their merger. They needed him gone." James nodded, slipping the drive into his pocket. "I'll have my team verify this," he said. "If it's real, there will be consequences." The weight of his words hung heavy, a promise of justice or retribution. Sylvia's laugh was sharp, forced. "This is absurd," she said, turning to the crowd. "He's just a bitter boy lashing out at his father. Can't you see he's unstable?" She gestured at Ethan, her diamond bracelet glinting. Some guests nodded, swayed by her charm, but others looked skeptical, their eyes flicking between Ethan and Victor. Ethan felt the sting of her words, the old wound of being called unstable for who he was. But Caleb's hand on his shoulder grounded him. "You're not alone," Caleb whispered, and Ethan drew a shaky breath. He wasn't that scared kid anymore. hiding his truth to please his father. He was here, exposed, but free. Unstable, Ethan said, his voice rising. I was 18 when you threw me out. Dad. You said I was a disgrace because I loved someone. But the real disgrace is you planning a murder to protect your empire. He turned to the crowd. You're all witnesses. Don't let them bury this. The guards moved closer, but James raised a hand, stopping them. No one touches him, he said. The crowd was a mix of chaos and silence, some shouting, others whispering, all eyes on Ethan. Margaret Klein was still recording, her face alight with the thrill of a scoop. Victor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You'll regret this, Ethan. But Ethan saw the cracks in his father's facade, the sweat on his brow, the twitch in his jaw. Victor was powerful, but he wasn't untouchable. As the sun sank lower, painting the sky in streaks of crimson, Ethan felt a surge of clarity. He'd come here to expose a crime, but this was about more than that. It was about reclaiming his voice, his identity, his right to exist as he was. Caleb's hand in his was a reminder. Love was his strength, not his shame. But the danger was far from over. Victor and Sylvia were cornered, and cornered animals were unpredictable. Ethan knew they wouldn't go down without a fight. As the crowd buzzed and security closed in, he braced himself for what came next. The truth was out, but the battle had just begun. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made your skin prickle. Ethan's heart hammered as he scanned the crowd, their faces a blur of shock, curiosity, and judgment. Caleb's hand in his was the only thing keeping him from bolting. Victor stepped closer, his eyes blazing. You think you can destroy me with a stunt like this? He hissed, low enough that only Ethan and Caleb could hear. You're nothing but a disappointment. The words cut deep, but Ethan refused to flinch. He'd heard them before, and they'd lost their power. Before Ethan could respond, Margaret Klein pushed through the crowd, her phone still recording. Ethan, can you confirm the details? She asked, her voice sharp but professional. Who else is involved? How did you get this evidence? Her questions were a lifeline, pulling Ethan back to his purpose. I hacked into Hart Enterprises' old servers, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Found a deleted file with emails between Victor and Sylvia. They hired a mechanic, paid him through an offshore account. Richard's crash was no accident. The crowd gasped, and Margaret's eyes gleam-edged knew this was career-defining. Sylvia's composure cracked. Lies. She snapped, her voice shrill. This is slander. We'll sue you into oblivion. But her hands trembled, betraying her panic. Ethan caught it, and so did the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. James Whitaker, still holding the USB, turned to Victor. If this is true, Victor, the board will have questions. Serious ones. His tone was calm, but the threat was clear. Victor's empire wasn't just his, it was a public company, and the board held power he couldn't ignore. Ethan felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. Two security guards grabbed his arms, their grips bruising. Let's go, kid, one growled. Caleb lunged forward, shoving one of them. Get off him, he shouted, his voice raw with protectiveness. The crowd parted as a woman in her 50s, elegant in a navy suit, stepped forward. Enough, she said, her voice commanding. It was Eleanor Hart, Ethan's mother, who'd been sitting quietly in the back. Ethan hadn't seen her in years, not since she'd chosen silence over defending him against Victor. Her presence now was a shock, a ghost from a life he'd left behind. Release my son, Eleanor said, her eyes locked on the guards. They hesitated, then let go, stepping back. She turned to Ethan, her face a mix of regret and resolve. I didn't stand up for you before, she said softly. But I'm here now. Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to believe her, but years of abandonment made trust hard. Still, her presence shifted the dynamic. The crowd, sensing a family drama unfolding, leaned in closer. Margaret Klein was practically vibrating with excitement, her phone capturing every word. Victor's face darkened. Eleanor, stay out of this, he warned, but she ignored him, stepping closer to Ethan. What you're doing is brave, she said, and dangerous. But I won't let them silence you. Her words were a balm, but Ethan knew they came too late to heal old wounds. Caleb squeezed Ethan's hand, grounding him. We need to get out of here, he whispered. They're not going to let this slide. Ethan nodded, but before they could move, Sylvia grabbed the microphone from the stage. Everyone, please, she said, her voice smooth again, a performer reclaiming the stage. This is a misunderstanding. Ethan's been through a lot, and he's confused. Let's not ruin this beautiful day. Her charm was magnetic, and some guests nodded, swayed by her act. Ethan's stomach churned. She was good. If they didn't act fast, she and Victor would spin this into a narrative that painted Ethan as the villain. He glanced at James, who was already on his phone, likely calling his team to verify the USB's contents. But verification would take time, and time was something Ethan didn't have. We need to go public, Ethan said to Caleb, his voice urgent. If we don't, they'll bury this. Caleb nodded, his jaw set. Then we move fast. Margaret's got the footage, let's make sure it spreads. As they turned to leave, Victor grabbed Ethan's arm. This isn't over, he said, his voice a low growl. You'll pay for this. Ethan yanked free, meeting his father's gaze. I already paid, he said. When you threw me out. This time, I'm fighting back. With Caleb by his side and Eleanor trailing behind, Ethan pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding but his resolve unbroken. The truth was out, but the war was just beginning. Victor and Sylvia wouldn't go down easily, and Ethan knew they'd come for him next. But for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. And that made all the difference. The night air hit Ethan like a slap as he and Caleb burst out of the wedding tent, Eleanor close behind. The Hamptons estate, once a glittering fantasy, now felt like a trap closing in. Ethan's pulse raced, his mind spinning with what came next. We need to get to Margaret, Caleb said, his voice urgent as they dodged catering staff and stunned guests. If she posts that video, they can't bury this. Ethan nodded, his eyes scanning for the journalist. Margaret Klein was their best shot at making the truth go viral before Victor and Sylvia could spin their lies. Eleanor grabbed Ethan's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. I know a place you can hide, she said, her voice low. A cabin, not far from here. It's off the grid. Ethan stared at her, torn between gratitude and resentment. Why now? He asked, the words spilling out. You didn't care when he kicked me out. Eleanor's face crumpled, but she held his gaze. I was wrong, she said. I let fear control me. But I'm here now. Ethan, let me help. Her sincerity pierced him, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford yet. Still, a safe place to regroup sounded better than running blind. They found Margaret near the parking lot, her phone still in hand, typing furiously. Ethan, she called, waving them over. This is going live tonight. My outlet's already prepping the story. Her eyes gleamed with the thrill of a bombshell scoop. But you need to disappear. Victor's got connections, cops, lawyers, you name it. Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd known his father was powerful, but the reality of being hunted hit hard. We've got a place, Caleb said, glancing at Eleanor. Can you get us out of here? Margaret nodded, pulling keys from her purse. My car's over there. Move. The four of them piled into Margaret's SUV, the engine roaring to life as they peeled out of the estate. Ethan's hands shook as he clutched the USB's backup in his pocket, a copy he'd made just in case. Caleb's hand found his, steadying him. We're okay, Caleb whispered. We've got this. The drive to Eleanor's cabin was tense, the Hamptons' winding roads cloaked in darkness. Margaret broke the silence. I've sent the video to my editor, she said. It's raw, but it's damning. You two are about to become very famous or infamous. Ethan didn't want fame. He wanted justice. But he knew Margaret was right. This was bigger than him now. The cabin was a small, weathered structure hidden in a pine grove, far from the glitz of the Hamptons. Inside, it was sparse but cozy wooden floors, a stone fireplace, a single couch. Eleanor lit a lamp, casting soft shadows. No one knows about this place, she said. Not even Victor. Ethan sank onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over him. Caleb sat beside him, their shoulders touching. What now? Caleb asked, his voice soft but steady. Ethan looked at him, the man who'd stood by him through every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. We wait, Ethan said. Margaret's story will hit, and then we see who comes for us. Eleanor knelt in front of Ethan, her eyes searching his. I know I failed you, she said. But I'm proud of you. What you did today took courage I never had. Ethan wanted to push her away, to hold on to his anger, but her words cracked something open in him. He nodded, unable to speak. Margaret's phone buzzed, and she checked it, her face grim. It's live, she said. The video's on our site, and it's already trending on X. She showed them the screen, grainy footage of Ethan at the microphone, his voice ringing out, accusing Victor and Sylvia. Comments were flooding in, some calling him a hero, others a liar. Ethan's heart sank. Public opinion was a double-edged sword. We need to secure the evidence, Caleb said. If they come for us, they'll come for that USB too. Ethan nodded, pulling out his laptop from his backpack. He uploaded the files to an encrypted cloud server, his fingers flying over the keys. Done, he said. Even if they get the drive, the truth is out there. But the truth came with a cost. As the night deepened, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You can't hide forever. His blood ran cold. Victor's reach was long, and Ethan knew he wouldn't stop until he silenced them. Caleb's arm around him was a reminder of what he was fighting for, not just justice, but a future where they could love freely, without fear. As the fire crackled in the cabin, Ethan felt the weight of the battle ahead. The world was watching, but so were his enemies. And they were closer than he thought. The cabin's quiet was shattered by a distant crunch of gravel. Ethan's head snapped up, his heart racing. Caleb was already at the window, peering through the blinds. Car lights, he whispered. Someone's here. Margaret grabbed her phone, her journalist instincts kicking in. Stay calm, she said, but her voice was tight. Eleanor moved to the door, her face pale but resolute. It's probably nothing, she said, though no one believed it. Ethan's mind raced. Victor's text, "You can't hide forever," echoed like a warning bell. Caleb pulled Ethan to the back of the cabin. If it's them, we run, he said, his blue eyes fierce. Ethan nodded, clutching his laptop. The uploaded files were safe, but losing the physical USB would weaken their case. He glanced at Eleanor, who was now holding a fireplace poker like a weapon. The sight of his mother, once so distant, ready to fight for him, stirred something complicated in his chest. The knock on the door was sharp, deliberate. "Open up," a man's voice called, gruff and authoritative. Margaret motioned for silence, then crept to the door, peering through the peephole. "It's not cops," she whispered. "Private security. Victor's men." Ethan's stomach churned. He'd expected this, but not so soon. "We need a plan," he hissed. Caleb nodded, scanning the room. "Back door," he said. "We slip out. Get to the woods." Eleanor shook her head. "They'll have the perimeter covered. We need to stall." Margaret, ever the strategist, grabbed her phone and started recording. "If they break in, this goes live," she said. "They won't touch us if the world's watching." Her boldness gave Ethan a spark of hope, but the pounding on the door grew louder, more insistent. "Ethan Hart." The voice shouted. "We know you're in there. Come out, or we come in." Ethan's hands shook, but Caleb's steady grip on his shoulder kept him grounded. "We're not giving up," Caleb said. "Not now. Not ever." Eleanor stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'll talk to them," she said. "Buy you time." Before Ethan could protest, she opened the door a crack, the poker hidden behind her back. "What do you want?" she demanded, her tone icy. The man outside was broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by a cap. "Your son's got something that belongs to Mr. Hart," he said. "Hand it over, and no one gets hurt." Ethan's blood boiled. They weren't just after the U.S., they were after control. The same control Victor had always wielded over him. Eleanor didn't flinch. "You're on my property," she said. "Leave, or I call the police." The man laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Police won't help you. Not with Mr. Hart's friends in high places." Margaret whispered to Ethan, "I'm streaming this to my outlet. Keep them talking." Ethan nodded, his mind racing for a way out. He and Caleb crept toward the back door, but a loud crash stopped them cold. The front door splintered as two more men forced their way in, their faces hard and unyielding. Eleanor swung the poker, catching one man in the shoulder. He grunted but didn't fall. "Run," she shouted, and Ethan didn't hesitate. He and Caleb bolted for the back door, bursting into the chilly night air. The woods loomed ahead, dark and dense, a maze that could either save them or trap them. They ran, branches snapping underfoot, their breaths ragged. Behind them, shouts echoed. Victor's men were close. Ethan's laptop bounced in his bag, a reminder of the evidence they carried. "Keep going," Caleb panted, his hand brushing Ethan's as they dodged trees. The forest was their only chance, but it felt like running into a void. A gunshot cracked through the air, and Ethan's heart stopped. He grabbed Caleb, pulling him behind a tree. "You okay?" he whispered, his voice shaking. Caleb nodded, his face pale but determined. "They're trying to scare us," he said. "We're not done yet." Back at the cabin, Eleanor's voice rang out, defiant. "You won't find them," she shouted, and Ethan's chest tightened. His mother was risking everything for him, a debt he didn't know how to repay. Margaret's voice followed, sharp and clear. "This is live. The world sees you." Ethan prayed her stream was enough to keep Victor's men at bay. As they crouched in the dark, Ethan's mind raced. The evidence was safe online, but they needed to get it to someone who could act on it, someone outside Victor's reach. The woods offered temporary cover, but they couldn't hide forever. Caleb's hand found his. A silent vow. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. But the sound of footsteps crunching closer told Ethan their fight was far from over. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, the moonlight barely piercing the canopy. Ethan's lungs burned as he and Caleb crouched behind a moss-covered boulder, the sound of pursuit growing closer. His hand gripped Caleb's, their fingers slick with sweat but locked together. "We can't keep running blind," Caleb whispered, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We need a destination." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. The nearest town was miles away, and Victor's men likely had the roads covered. But there was one person who might help, Lena Torres, a former Hart Enterprises lawyer who'd left after clashing with Victor. She lived nearby, and if anyone could get the evidence to the right people, it was her. "Lena's place," Ethan said, his voice low. "She's in Southampton. If we can get there, she'll know what to do." Caleb nodded, pulling out his phone to check the map. The signal was weak, but it was enough to plot a rough route. 2 miles, mostly through woods, he said. "We can make it." The crunch of boots on leaves snapped them back to reality. Ethan peered around the boulder, spotting flashlights cutting through the darkness. Victor's men were methodical, fanning out like hunters. Ethan's heart pounded, but Caleb's calm focus grounded him. "We move now," Caleb said, while they're spread out. They darted from the boulder, keeping low, weaving through trees. Every snap of a twig felt like a gunshot, but they pushed forward, driven by adrenaline and the weight of their mission. Ethan's thoughts flickered to Eleanor and Margaret, left behind at the cabin. He prayed Margaret's live stream was keeping them safe, but the gunshot earlier gnawed at him. He couldn't lose his mother not when they were finally reconnecting. After what felt like hours, the trees thinned, and a small house came into view, its porch light a beacon in the dark. Lena's place. Ethan's legs ached, but hope surged. They approached cautiously, checking for signs of pursuit. The woods were quiet now, too quiet. Caleb knocked softly on the door, and after a tense moment, it opened. Lena Torres, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, stood there in a bathrobe, her expression wary. "Ethan Hart," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and suspicion. "What the hell are you doing here?" "We need your help," Ethan said, breathless. "It's about my father." "And a murder?" Lena's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside, letting them in. The house was modest, a stark contrast to the Hart empire, with bookshelves stuffed with legal texts and a laptop glowing on the table. Ethan explained everything: the wedding, the USB, the evidence of Richard's murder, and the men chasing them. Lena listened, her face unreadable, but her eyes flicked to the laptop as Ethan mentioned the uploaded files. "You've got proof?" she asked. Ethan nodded, pulling out his own laptop to show her the cloud server. "It's all here," he said. "But Victor's men are after us. We need to get this to someone who can act: FBI, DOJ, anyone." Lena leaned back, her fingers tapping the table. "Victor's got friends in high places," she said. "I saw it when I worked for him. But I know two people he can't touch." She grabbed her phone, dialing a contact. "I'm calling a friend at the FBI. She'll want to see this." As Lena spoke in hushed tones, Ethan glanced at Caleb, who was watching the windows, his jaw tight. "You okay?" Ethan whispered. Caleb gave a small smile. "As long as you're with me, I'm fine." The words warmed Ethan, A reminder of why they were fighting not just for justice, but for a future where they could be themselves. Unapologetically. Lena hung up, her face grim but determined. My contact's on her way, she said. But you two need to stay out of sight. If Victor's men find you here, it's over. She pointed to a guest room. Hide there. I'll handle the rest. Ethan and Caleb slipped into the room, the weight of the night crashing over them. They sank onto the bed, their hands still clasped. I'm scared, Ethan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Caleb pulled him close, their foreheads touching. Me too, he said. But we're doing this together. That's what matters. Outside, the sound of a car engine rumbled, too close for comfort. Ethan's heart raced as Lena's voice carried from the living room, calm but firm. Stay back, she said to someone at the door. Ethan held his breath, praying Lena's connections were enough to keep them safe. The truth was out, but the danger was closer than ever. The guest room was dim, the only light a faint glow from a cracked window. Ethan and Caleb sat on the edge of the bed, their hands still locked, listening to the muffled voices outside. Lena's tone was sharp, authoritative, but the low growl of a man's voice sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Victor's men had found them. Caleb's eyes met Ethan's. A silent question, fight or flee. Ethan shook his head slightly. Running now would only lead them back into the woods, with no guarantee of escape. Their best chance was Lena and her FBI contact. But the wait was agony, each second stretching into eternity. A loud bang from the living room made them both jump. You can't come in here, Lena shouted, her voice steady but strained. Ethan's heart pounded as he pictured her standing her ground, alone against Victor's hired muscle. He wanted to help, but Caleb's grip tightened, a wordless plea to stay put. The door to the guest room creaked, and Ethan's breath caught. But it was Lena, her face pale, her eyes blazing. They're searching the property, she whispered. My contact's 15 minutes out. You need to hold tight. She handed Ethan a flash drive. This is a copy of your files. If anything happens to me, get it to Agent Harper. Ethan took the drive, his hands trembling. Lena, you don't have to, he started, but she cut him off. I owe you this, she said. Victor ruined a lot of lives, including mine. This is my fight too. Before Ethan could respond, a crash echoed from the front of the house glass shattering, followed by heavy footsteps. Lena's eyes widened. Under the bed, she hissed. Now. Ethan and Caleb dropped to the floor, sliding beneath the low frame, their bodies pressed close. The air was thick with dust, and Ethan's heart thundered so loudly he was sure it would give them away. Through the crack under the bed, Ethan saw boots enter the room, black, polished, purposeful. Check everywhere, a man's voice barked. Furniture scraped, drawers slammed. Ethan held his breath, Caleb's hand squeezing his so tightly it hurt. The boots stopped inches from the bed, and Ethan's stomach lurched. If they looked down, it was over. But then a new sound cut through the Tenziona siren, distant but growing louder. The boots hesitated, then retreated. Cops. A voice shouted from the living room. Move out. The house shook with the sound of men scrambling, their footsteps fading as they fled. Ethan and Caleb crawled out, their limbs shaking. Lena was at the door, her phone pressed to her ear. They're gone, she said, relief flooding her voice. Agent Harper's here. She opened the front door, and a woman in a dark suit stepped inside, her badge gleaming. Lena, the woman said, her tone brisk. Where's the evidence? Ethan stepped forward, holding out the flash drive. It's all here, he said, his voice hoarse. Emails, bank records, proof of the murder plot. Agent Harper, a no-nonsense woman in her 30s, took the drive, her eyes scanning Ethan and Caleb. You two have stirred up a hornet's nest, she said. But if this checks out, Victor Hart's done. As Harper's team swept the house, securing the scene, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. The evidence was in the right hands now, but the danger wasn't over. Victor and Sylvia had resources, connections, and a ruthless drive to protect their empire. Ethan glanced at Caleb, whose steady presence was a lifeline. We're close, Caleb whispered, his voice fierce with determination. Lena pulled Ethan aside, her expression soft but urgent. I'm sorry for what you went through, she said. When I worked for your father, I saw how he treated you. I should have spoken up. Ethan nodded, the weight of her words settling in. Forgiveness was a long road, but he was starting to see the people who'd failed him were fighting back now, in their own way. Agent Harper returned, her face grim. The files are solid, she said. We're issuing warrants for Victor and Sylvia, but they've gone underground. You two need to stay low until we bring them in. Ethan's heart sank. Underground meant Victor was still a threat, plotting his next move. As dawn broke, painting the sky in soft pinks, Ethan and Caleb stepped outside, their hands still clasped. The world felt different now, fragile but full of possibility. They'd exposed the truth, but the cost was still unfolding. With Victor out there, nowhere was safe. But as Caleb pulled him close, Ethan knew one thing for certain. They'd face whatever came next together. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. Ethan and Caleb sat on the steps of Lena's porch, watching Agent Harper's team load equipment into their vans. The flash drive was gone, now in the hands of the FBI, a ticking bomb set to bring down Victor's empire. But Ethan felt no triumph, only a quiet, gnawing fear that this wasn't over. Caleb's arm around his shoulders was a steady anchor. We did it, Caleb said softly, his voice a mix of exhaustion and pride. Ethan leaned into him, drawing strength from his warmth. We started it, he corrected. Victor's still out there. He won't stop. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then we keep fighting. Together. Lena emerged from the house, her face weary but resolute. Harper's team is moving fast, she said. They've got eyes on Victor's properties, but he and Sylvia are ghosts. You two need to stay hidden safe houses, new identities if it comes to that. Ethan's stomach twisted. A life on the run wasn't what he'd imagined when he fell in love with Caleb, dreaming of quiet nights and shared dreams. Agent Harper approached, her expression unreadable. The evidence is airtight, she said. We've got enough to charge Victor and Sylvia with conspiracy to commit murder, plus financial fraud. But they've got lawyers who'll drag this out. And they've got friends, powerful ones. She handed Ethan a card with a number scrawled on it. If anything feels off, call me. Day or night. Ethan took the card, his fingers brushing the worn edges. What about my mom? He asked. And Margaret? Harper's face softened slightly. They're safe. Your mother's with our team, giving a statement. Margaret's already milking this for her next Pulitzer. Ethan managed a small smile, relieved but still uneasy. As Harper's van pulled away, Lena sat beside them, her eyes distant. I left Hart Enterprises because I saw what Victor was capable of, she said. But I never thought he'd go this far. You were brave, Ethan. Braver than I ever was. Her words carried weight, a bridge to the past Ethan was still navigating. He nodded, unsure how to respond. Forgiveness was complicated, but her actions last night had earned a piece of his trust. The next few days were a blur of safe houses and whispered plans. Ethan and Caleb moved under FBI protection, their lives reduced to burner phones and guarded glances. Margaret's story had exploded online, the video of Ethan's speech trending worldwide. Hashtags like Justice for Ethan and Heart Exposed flooded X. But so did vitriol trolls calling him a liar, a traitor to his family. It hurt, but Caleb's presence dulled the sting. "They don't know you," Caleb said one night, his voice fierce. "But I do. And I'm proud." A week later, news broke. Victor and Sylvia had been arrested in a private jet bound for Dubai. The FBI had tracked them through offshore accounts, the same ones Ethan's evidence had exposed. Cameras caught Victor's face as he was led away in handcuffs, his usual arrogance replaced by a hollow stare. Sylvia, ever the actress, kept her chin high, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Ethan watched the footage on a safe-house TV, his heart a tangle of relief and grief. This was his father, the man who'd shaped him, broken him, and now faced ruin because of him. Caleb squeezed his hand. "You did the right thing," he said. Ethan nodded, but the weight of it lingered. Justice wasn't clean, it was messy, painful, and left scars. The trial was months away, but the evidence was overwhelming. Victor's empire began to crumble, board members distancing themselves, stocks plummeting. Eleanor reached out, her calls tentative but persistent. "I want to be part of your life," she said in one voicemail. "If you'll let me." Ethan wasn't ready to answer, but he saved the message, a small step toward healing. One evening, in a quiet safe house overlooking a lake, Ethan and Caleb sat together, the world finally still. "What now?" Ethan asked, his voice soft. Caleb smiled, his eyes bright with hope. "Now we live," he said. "For us, for the truth, for everyone who's been silenced." Ethan kissed him, the taste of freedom bittersweet but real. The fight had cost them family, safety, the life they'd known. But it had given them something greater, a love that had faced fire and come out stronger, and a voice that had shaken an empire. As the sun set over the lake, Ethan knew they'd keep fighting, not just for justice, but for a world where love like theirs could thrive, unapologetically. And that was a victory worth everything.